One of the first videos we made on this channel was a top 10 of movies dedicated to the world of motorsports, where we based the list on professional film criticism at that time. And we were planning to do a remake, but considering that there are many weeks ahead without Formula 1 and little motorsport in general, to keep you entertained, how about this time we do a top 20 of motorsport movies instead? And this time, the ranking will be based on my personal taste and not so much on the specialized critics. And believe me, I'm not a movie buff or an expert in the world of cinema at all, but I've seen a lot of movies about race cars. So, if at this point you still feel like listening to the rum, the guatata guatatatata, and the sweetie sweetie tititi of race cars, let me welcome you to this video that might make you miss the world of car racing a little less. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the top 20 movies about the world of motorsports. Let's start with what for many, myself included, is one of the worst motorsports movies that probably exists today. A movie released in 2007 directed by Daniel Cirilli called Fast Gear. I'm not sure what it's called in Latin America, but in Spain it was Chica Veloz. The movie follows Alex Johnston, who wants to be a professional race car driver, but her dream is derailed when her father dies in a race. However, in her attempt to become a driver, she finds that her family and the racing world want to shut the doors on her, believing that racing is not a world for women. But Preya decides to compete anyway, and prove to the world that they are completely wrong. And look, from what I remember about the story, it's very flat and full of cliches, and although the racing sequences are quite enjoyable, the story is not. So after a while it becomes quite forgettable, and personally, it didn't really catch my attention at the time. Unfortunately, to confirm my feelings, I realized that there's no way to watch the movie online, neither legally nor through less orthodox methods. So, considering that I remember it was very forgettable and that at least I couldn't find a way to watch it nowadays, in 2025 it stays in last place on this list of motorsport movies.
Number 33 is Driving Like Her and is on fire.
That same year, another similarly themed movie was released alongside Fast Years. Once again, a girl who is fast on the track and wants to show the world her talent in a male-dominated discipline. That's the plot of The Circuit. A movie released in June 2008 that tells the story of Kylie Shines, a girl who, besides being a teacher at an elementary school, is also a promising stock car driver, the daughter of a former driver. He was a champion in this discipline in his time and one of the greatest legends in stock car racing. The story goes that the girl manages to balance her life in motorsports with her life as a teacher, and her skills soon earn her an opportunity to become a professional in the field. My main issue with this movie is its predictability. The racing sequences don't convey much overall, and something that frustrates me is that every single race in this movie takes place on the same track. It's as if in the United States, there's only one oval track. But like I said, the story revolves around Kylie trying to go pro while also proving to her father that she's better and that she doesn't need him. But overall, I found the movie pretty boring and honestly not very enjoyable. If you particularly want to give it a chance, it's available on YouTube in English, and unfortunately, I haven't been able to find a properly subtitled version. I'm telling you this in case you want to draw your own conclusions, but at least in my case, it stays at number 19 on my list of movies dedicated to the world of motorsports. The world of karting is simply fascinating. And in 2020, the production company Roadshot Films, in collaboration with Netflix, decided to tell a story about the world where every professional driver gets started. The story of go-karts follows the life of Jack Hooper, a young man who lost his father to cancer and has to start his life from scratch after moving to a new area in Australia. Right there, at a party, he discovers go-karts thanks to a rental dirt go-kart track, and there he finds out that he likes the fast karts and becomes interested in them to the point of wanting to become a professional. Thanks to this, he meets friends Colin and Mandy, and together they use junk to build a go-kart so he can enter the Australian National Kart Championship. And surprised despite his lack of experience, the boy has an incredible talent for this world. The story itself is pretty average. It entertains you and teaches you some interesting concepts, but it suffers from being unrealistic and again, extremely predictable. It's the typical story of a boy who's a nobody, but turns out to be a prodigy, obviously with few resources, where life is very complicated for him to become a professional, etc., etc., etc. As I mentioned, the movie is enjoyable, but I don't think it truly captures the world of karting. The movie is on Netflix, and if you don't have anything to do these days, I recommend at least giving it a chance. But personally, I'd suggest watching it with your expectations a bit low. So, number 18 on our particular ranking, the Australian movie Go with Subtitles. Nezha, Running Through Life, was one of my biggest surprises when watching movies of this style. This is a Taiwanese movie from 2021 that tells the story of the Lions team. A team used to winning in their touring car category, but after the death of their leader, Lao Shen, they start to lose their dominance, and from their glory days, now only ashes remain. In this story, we meet three very important characters. Lily Liu, the promising driver of this team, Jeffrey Lee, a legend in the category known as the King, and Du Jike, a prodigious simulator and esports driver. However, during Lily's first professional race, she gets injured, and in the need to find sponsors and a replacement, a brand offers them a lot of money to put a guy who competes in simulators on the team. And yes, Du Jike is an excellent driver, but only in the simulator, because on the real track he feels fear and panic, making his test in real race cars a complete disaster overall. But in the need to save the Lions team, Lily teaches him the art of driving. And from there, this movie becomes the battle of a legend who doesn't want to end her time on the track. The story of a promising girl in the racing world who wants to move up, and that of a young simulator prodigy who jumps onto the track and evolves to help his friend Lily. But with these three people sharing a clear, simple goal. Wanting to save the Lions team, which could disappear if this organization doesn't start winning soon. The movie itself is quite entertaining, the racing sequences are really exciting, and the plot, even though it might seem predictable, keeps you pretty hooked, or at least that's what happened to me. It's not the most realistic motorsports movie, but it fulfills its purpose and tells a story that felt fresh at the time. The movie is available on Amazon Prime, at least in Mexico, and if you give it a chance, you might be pleasantly surprised. So, in the number 17 spot on our motorsports movie ranking, Nesca, Racing for Life. In 2006, a movie was released that many consider to be a pretty entertaining story from the world of NASCAR. Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby, or as it was known in Mexico, Ricky Bobby, Crazy for Speed. It's a movie inspired by the American racing category that tells the story of Ricky Bobby, a mechanic on a NASCAR team who gets the opportunity of a lifetime when the team's main driver decides to take a break halfway through the season. During a race, and his crew chief, having no other option, decides to put him in to compete. And surprise, the guy ends up finishing third in his first race, becoming a sensation among the crowd. This prompts Ricky to become a professional driver, ultimately making him one of NASCAR's most successful drivers. However, Ricky becomes arrogant and angers the son of a billionaire who in revenge hires a Formula One driver who is gay, and somehow this is very important in the story, and he starts beating him and mocking him as well. So the story takes us through the rivalry between these two on the track in an unorthodox way through comedy. Because yes, my friends, this is a complete comedy movie. It's personal taste, but I'm not a big fan of this genre. Still, the movie made me laugh out loud several times. The races are entertaining, you have fun with Bobby's adventures, but as I said, personally, it's not what I expect from a racing movie, although I have to admit, it is entertaining. So it will depend on you and your personal taste if you decide to give it a chance. But at least for me, it stays at number 16 on my list of movies about the world of motorsports.
There is a legend about mysterious powers and a magical past, and when the family is in trouble...
If you don't know Herbie's story, you probably don't know one of the most iconic cars in cinema. In 1968, the story of the little Beetle that has a life of its own premiered. And I didn't see that original movie in particular, but I did see the 2005 version, Herbie Fully Loaded. A movie starring this little Beetle and Lindsay Lohan, who plays Margaret Payton. It actually tells both their stories. How Herbie became known in the late 60s for being a successful race car, but when his fame ended, he ended up abandoned in a junkyard. Maggie, on her part, was looking for a new vehicle to start getting around. She meets Herbie, and that's where the relationship between the two begins. Soon, Maggie realizes that Herbie is not a conventional car. They start competing in some races, catching the attention of the NASCAR world. And you probably already know the story by this point, but still, I don't want to spoil it. And look, for many, this is already considered a classic story in cinema, the story of the charismatic Beetle with a life of its own, which has won the hearts of many fans of this movie throughout history. It's a fun movie that has aged fairly well. And as time goes by, it continues to be fondly remembered by those who saw it for the first time quite a while ago. So, number 15, the movie Herbie, fully loaded in our top list of motorsport movies. Released in 2008, Speed Racer, or as it was known in Latin America, Meteoro. It's a movie based on the popular animated series of the same name. It takes us to a completely futuristic world of motorsport. This movie puts us in the shoes of Meteoro, a young and skilled driver who is known for his particular talent on the track, and because his brother was a very popular competitor until he mysteriously disappeared. However, Meteoro, despite proving to be a competitor with special skills, he quickly realizes that the world of racing is completely rigged in favor of business groups with a lot of money and power. And to beat them, the only way to do it is to participate in a very dangerous race that could give them access to the biggest race in the world, the 91st edition of the Grand Prix. And to beat all the corrupt businessmen on their own turf, to make the world of racing a completely free sport. And look, this movie may have a very futuristic theme, but you can really feel the essence of racing, both on circuits and in rally-style races. Obviously, this movie isn't realistic, but that's not a problem. If you watch Speed Racer, you know exactly what to expect. And if you enjoyed the series back in the day, definitely. The plot of this movie will amaze you, even more than 10 years after its release. It still looks spectacular thanks to its unique artistic style. It's obviously not for everyone, and even less so for the purists, but if you have a more open mind, it's a movie I highly recommend. So, number 14 on our list of racing movies, Meteoro, or as it's originally known, Speed Racer. In 2016, an Italian racing-themed movie was released. I have to admit, it surprised me in a good way. Italy at its roots, or as its original name says, Veloce come il vento. It tells the story of Giulia De Martino, who is a 17-year-old race car driver. She competes in the legendary Italian GT Championship, but during one of the first races of the season, Giulia's father dies of a heart attack. This puts the whole team in a difficult situation. First, because her father had mortgaged their house so Giulia could compete in the championship, and second, because the troubled brother returns to the family. His name is Loris. He is a former rally driver who is now a troubled drug addict, and since Giulia and her younger brother are minors, now they have to live with him or they'll have to move to an orphanage. But if Giulia doesn't win the championship title, they'll lose their house. So now Loris will try to teach his sister everything he knows and everything she needs to win, to save their home and what's left of their family. From my point of view, the story is really good. But where this movie truly stands out is in the racing scenes, which are sequences filmed from real competitions on different circuits in Italy, like Mugello, Imola, Monza or Vallelunga, making the movie feel completely authentic when it comes to the competitions, and with a huge surprise in the last few minutes of this film. I didn't have high expectations when I watched it, and I was pleasantly surprised. It's one of those stories that's a good experience, and an excuse to eat popcorn, but it's completely entertaining. However, I think there are better movies in this top list, but if you get the chance, give it a look, because I think you'll end up liking it. So, number 13 on our list, the Italian movie Veloce come il vento, or as it's more popularly known, The Italian Race.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
On this circuit, the world's most famous motor races run for 24 hours each year.
There are movies that become cult classics, and definitely Le Mans 1971 is one of them. A movie starring Steve McQueen. Its story revolves around Michael Delaney, who is one of the best drivers in the world. He is seeking to win the 1971 edition of the 24 Hours of Le Mans with the Porsche team. However, a year before this competition, he had to witness the death of his competitor, Piero Belghetti. Delaney remembers the pain it caused his wife. With this, he not only has to overcome the pressure from what he suffered in that competition, but also stay focused in a race known for being dangerous and a real bloodbath. The movie is essentially a love letter to motorsport fans. The sequences in the movie are filmed directly from the race, so watching this movie is like witnessing the races of that era live. With its danger, its glamour, with the spectacular sounds, and the action of the true competitiveness of the 24 hours of Le Mans at that time. If I rank this movie so low on this list, it's basically because it's literally like you're watching a race from that era. The plot is practically non-existent. Most of the movie is just sequences of the competition, and it feels a bit empty in that regard. But the movie isn't bad, and it's a treat to watch the race sequences. They're also done in a way that feels completely authentic. It's one of those little gems that, if you're a fan of old-school motorsports, believe me, you're going to absolutely love. So, number 12 on our top 20 motorsports movies list, Le Mans from 1971, starring Steve McQueen.
Hold on a minute, don't you think we ought to talk?
What, about how I'm gonna run? Sure.
About how you've managed to live as long as you have.
Days of Thunder is a 1990 movie that's completely inspired by the world of NASCAR. It's a film directed by Tony Scott, with the main character played by Tom Cruise. The story follows Cole Trickle, a talented NASCAR rookie who's fast but inexperienced in competition. So he finds himself needing to be trained in racing by instructor Harry Hogg, who teaches him not only how to be fast, but also how to perform well in competition. And quickly, this young man starts to get the hang of the competition and begins winning races, positioning himself as one of the best drivers in NASCAR. However, he rivals the driver Roddy Burns, which leads to a fierce battle between them until both have an accident that leaves Cole Trickle in a coma. Over time, he is able to return to the track, but he loses all confidence in himself. The movie revolves around his rivalry with Burns, but also the way he regains his confidence to get back to his best level and start winning again. The movie itself is completely fascinating in many ways because it's built to be very similar to what Top Gun offers you, giving you constant adrenaline rushes from the thrill of victory. The story is much like the Top Gun movies, but it stands out with racing scenes that deliver direct shots of adrenaline, along with an on-track rivalry story that works its magic. The movie perfectly delivers what it promises. It aims to give you an adrenaline rush from going for the win, and it does that constantly. That's what has made it one of the top movies about motorsports. A fan favorite, especially among NASCAR enthusiasts. So, number 11 on this top 20 list of motorsports movies, Days of Thunder, starring Tom Cruise.
Oh, you're really lucky.
Okay, we're recording. The World Rally Championship has been the #1 motorsport on television worldwide. We're joined by Lancia, the team manager.
Rally fans around the world probably know the story of one of the most legendary rivalries in this sport, and in 2024 Race for Glory, Audi vs Lancia was released. The movie tells the story of the events of the 1983 World Rally Championship season, and all of Lancia's tricks in their unique battle against the German giant. In the pursuit of glory in this discipline, it covers the political battles, the particular tensions between both brands, and the difficulties faced in the world of rallying, and of course racing sequences of this kind. But even though I'm slowly falling in love with this world and I really like the movie, I feel that it's actually lacking in on-track action. The movie focuses much more on off-track drama, which isn't bad in itself, but overall, I feel like it's very empty when it comes to on-track action, which is what you, as a motorsport fan, are looking for. Plus, as the movie itself warns you, it's not a 100% faithful recreation of the events of that rivalry. However, the movie is very enjoyable, but overall I feel like it feels like wasted potential. But if you're an enthusiast or someone who's just getting to know this world, you're going to enjoy the movie as much as I did at the time. So ladies and gentlemen, in the top 10 of our video about motorsport movies, we have Race for Glory, Audi vs Lancia.
No race has ever been won in the first corner, but many have been lost there.
I have to admit that I'm forcing this movie in here, but The Art of Racing in the Rain became one of my favorite movies, which honestly I should probably rank higher on this list. It's because even though the foundation of the movie is racing, racing isn't the priority in this story. The movie puts us in the shoes of Enzo, a golden retriever who is adopted by the race car driver Denny Swift, who is among the most skilled drivers on the track. Since Denny is a driver, he takes Enzo to all the circuits where he competes, and Enzo ends up soaking in this world, learning about racing and about life, using the difficulty of driving in the rain as a metaphor. One of the toughest situations any race car driver faces, but it's also where the phrase that defines this movie comes from, the phrase everything centers on. It's whether a driver has the courage to create his own conditions. Rain is just rain. A metaphor that Denny will have to use, both in his life as a driver and in the tough challenges that life throws at him. It will put him to the test in his personal life. As I told you, I can't recommend this movie, because the story only uses racing as a basis to explain other, more complex aspects of life and how tough it can get. But the few racing sequences are pretty good, and the references you'll find to car culture are simply sublime. So if you give it a chance, you'll find an emotional, funny, and quite captivating movie that will occasionally give you a good dose of racing and lessons about this competitive world. Anyway, number 9 on our list of racing movies, The Art of Racing in the Rain.
You get ready, you anticipate, you react. End of story.
We're back to the world of karting, for what is definitely my favorite movie that covers this particular category. Kart Racer is a film from 2003 that tells the story of Watts Davis, a young racing enthusiast but extremely troubled. He lost his mother, and his relationship with his father is not good at all, since his father is a former race car driver who, ever since he lost his wife, has changed his attitude and doesn't want his son to follow in his footsteps. Trying to strengthen his relationship with his father, he signs up for the national karting finals at his local track, hoping to showcase his talent and earn a shot at becoming a professional. I have to admit that I still find the movie fascinating, even 20 years after watching it. The training sequences of Watts, the story behind him and his father, and the main race. They're always thrilling whenever I watch it. It's clearly not a completely realistic movie about karting, but I think it reflects these competitions quite well, which are sometimes pretty underrated, and it gives you a really good adrenaline rush at every step this movie takes. It's my personal recommendation, and definitely, if you want a good dose of karts, you have to give this movie a chance. So number 8 on our list of motorsport movies, Kart Racer from 2003. Yes, if you follow me on the Chinese short video platform, you'll know perfectly well that I mentioned this movie as the worst motorsport movie in the world, and that's not just my opinion. That's what people who know much more about movies than I do say. But honestly, Driven from 2001 is my guilty pleasure when it comes to motorsport movies. It was Sylvester Stallone's attempt to break into the world of racing, and even though it was a box office flop, and even though many times you have to turn off your common sense to enjoy it, but it's still very enjoyable. The movie revolves around Jimmy Bly, a young talent who, in his rookie season in the kart series category, is competing for the World Drivers' Championship. However, his talent is inversely proportional to his ability to deal with the fame and pressure of being a promising motorsport driver. And under that pressure, he starts making mistakes that begin to cost him the chance to fight for the title. And to teach him and help him improve in every aspect, his chief mechanic Carl Henry decides to bring a retired driver with a reputation for winning, named Joe Tanto, back from retirement, portrayed by Sylvester Stallone. With him, Jimmy will have to learn to deal with his emotions, the pressure, the fame, and perform on the track if he wants to finally beat his rival for the title, Bo Brandenburg. The movie has aged poorly, actually more than a bit. Honestly, the story is just a popcorn flick. It has a bit of everything. Races, love triangles, dramatic racing sequences, accidents, explosions, fire. Damn, this is fucking cinema, gentlemen. And it combines footage from the real races of those years with some animated sequences, which are actually the ones that look the worst. But you can see legends from those years, like Adrian Fernandez, Juan Pablo Montoya, Paul Tracy, and many more. Look, we can argue about whether the movie is good or not. Opinions are welcome. But where I don't accept criticism is in the soundtrack. Every song fits perfectly, with the scenes the movie is showing you, giving you that adrenaline rush, which is exactly what it wants to give you in that moment. I can't call it a good movie since some things are poorly done. For instance, the final race happens on 3 separate tracks for no reason. It begins in Detroit. They continue the race at the Gilles Villeneuve circuit in Montreal, and somehow they end up on the street circuit in Toronto. But definitely, if you're not too picky, you're going to love this movie as much as I did. So, number 7 on the list of movies about the world of motorsports, Driven, from 2001.
All right. Here I go. Focus. Speed. I am fast. A winner. 42 losers, I eat losers for breakfast. I'm more than fast, more than quick. I'm lightning.
Hey, Lightning, ready?
Of course. Lightning is ready.
Surprise, surprise. Of course we weren't going to leave out the movie that was on our original top movies list we made back in 2020. It's the one that introduced many people to the world of motorsports. And I'm sure that many people got into racing because of the Pixar movie Cars. This animated movie takes us to a world populated by cars with their own lives and personalities. It tells the story of Lightning McQueen, a young car competing in the Piston Cup. In his rookie season, he's already fighting for the championship. However, Lightning is an arrogant, conceited racer who views his team as just another accessory. And during the final race of the season, just about to win, he blows his tires, and the race ends in a three-way tie with the other two title contenders, the King and Chick Hicks, forcing a tiebreaker round at another track to determine the season's champion. But while Lightning is heading to the new track, he has an accident that leaves him stranded in Radiator Springs, a small town forgotten by God, where Lightning accidentally damages the road. He's forced to fix it to get to his race. As Lightning spends more time in Radiator Springs, he begins to understand the value of friendship, loyalty, and camaraderie, lessons he learns from his friend Mater, a tow truck, and also thanks to the residents of Radiator Springs. So the more time he spends in this small town, the more he starts to wonder if it's more important to win and be the best race car there is, or if something else matters more. To spend time with family and friends. Obviously, Cars is not a movie for purists, but it's a film that draws you into this world in a different way, where you can't help but fall in love with Lightning McQueen and his adventures in Radiator Springs, while the character development completely works its magic. And I'm sure that many of you have this movie engraved in your hearts. It's a truly beautiful film. If you haven't seen it, I strongly encourage you to close this video, go watch it, and enjoy it from start to finish. So, number 6 on our list, Disney's Cars.
In 1978, I came to Europe to compete for the first time. It was just driving. It was a real competition, and that makes me happy.
Talking about Ayrton Senna means talking about the magic and mystique surrounding the Brazilian icon. A story that by now is well known by most motorsport fans around the world. But in 2010, a documentary film was released that chronicles Ayrton Senna's life and career. It highlights the Brazilian driver's greatest moments, his epic battles, and the heroics he displayed on the track, and how much he had to fight and suffer to reach the pinnacle of motorsport, all of this with completely real scenes and footage from the races of that era, accompanied by the sublime music of Maestro Antonio Pinto. Previously, this was my favorite movie in this whole genre, but as time goes by, you start to realize how extremely biased the movie is, where they omit many of the important events in Senna's story, or where they distort some of the issues, so as not to take away that heroic image from Senna, and always keep him as the victim. In the narrative they show in this documentary, this is something that, especially when making legendary rivalries, I learned wasn't exactly as the documentary showed it, because in many cases, Senna also had things to answer for. But if you omit this, you get a film that beautifully portrays Senna's struggle in Formula One, from his most heroic moments to his most difficult ones. And this documentary film is so moving that there comes a moment when you forget for a few seconds that, unfortunately, the ending doesn't change. Number 5. The 2010 documentary about Ayrton Senna da Silva.
Look out there. Out there. It's the lamp. Do you see it?
I think so.
One of the most fantastic stories in the world of motorsports is the one that tells a tale of revenge, redemption, and glory. Starring the Ford brand, which in the year 1966 would compete in the prestigious 24 Hours of Le Mans against the legendary prancing horse brand. The movie tells the story of that battle, from Ford's failed attempt to buy Ferrari and the subsequent public humiliation, to the multiple attempts to get the Ford GT40 ready, up to the battle of that 1960 season. The main characters of this story are Carroll Shelby, the creator of the Shelby brand, along with the driver Ken Miles, who is troublesome but very skilled, working for Ford to take revenge for the humiliation suffered by the Italian brand. To be honest, the movie is absolutely sublime. Once again, the events are not 100% faithful to what actually happened, but the movie quickly draws you in. The racing sequences are spectacular, but where this movie truly stands out is in the sound department, which is simply exquisite. In fact, this is what earned it the Oscars for Best Sound Editing, as well as the award for Best Film Editing. It's one of those movies that's good on its own, but works perfectly as a movie, and it's a must-see for those who love the world of motorsports. So, in the number 4 spot of this top 20, Ford vs. Ferrari.
If you miss your line in the game, reset. If you lose it in the race, you could die.
I realize putting Gran Turismo in 3rd place is subjective, but since this ranking reflects my personal tastes, I don't have to be objective. But it's not just the fact that Gran Turismo is my favorite racing video game, it's that the movie itself is a damn work of art. The story is based on a true story. A young man named Jan Mardenbroek. He is a very talented driver in the virtual world of Gran Turismo, winner of multiple championships and races in this video game, who is given an opportunity that will change his life forever. He can no longer afford a career as a professional driver since he comes from a low-income family. But he finds out that his favorite video game is holding a tournament where the best drivers will have the chance to enter a camp and compete in real cars, with a promise for the winner to become a professional race car driver. That's why Gran Turismo tells how Mardenbroek fought to win the GT Academy and achieve his dream of becoming a pro race car driver. The truth is, the movie once again is not faithful to the events of Jan Mardenbroek's story, but where it truly stands out is in the racing sequences, which are absolutely thrilling and not only give the viewer the feeling of watching a real race, but it also has many nods to Gran Turismo that those of us who love the video game really enjoy. I know it's not the best racing movie, but if you give it a chance, you'll be very pleasantly surprised, and you might even want to give the video game a try. Anyway, taking the bronze in our top list today is Gran Turismo, the movie based on a true story. This movie is what many consider a cult film, and for many people, it's the best movie ever made about the world of motorsports and Formula One. Grand Prix is a 1966 movie based on a fictional Formula One season that follows the story of 4 drivers, Pete Aaron and Jean-Pierre Sarti, Scott Stoddard and Nino Barlini. All 4 are great drivers and are capable of being world champions, but they not only have to show skill on the track, but also they have to overcome their own personal battles off the track to reach the final showdown and achieve the ultimate glory in motorsport. The movie lasts 3 hours, but believe me, it's pure cinematic excess. The races shown in the movie are based on real footage from competitions of those years, so watching this movie today is like watching, here in 2025, a Formula One race from those years, with all its spectacle, the impressive sounds of the cars, and above all, the danger of the races from back then. It also features driver changes from those years, which the most purist fans will quickly be able to identify. And believe me, this movie is a love letter to Formula One, and I know that if you give it a chance, you're going to love it just as much as I did back then. So number 2 spot and the silver medal in this ranking. Grand Prix from 1966.
My name is Niki Lauda, and I'm known in the world of motorsports for 2 things. The first is my rivalry with him. The second thing I'm remembered for is what happened on August 1st, 1976. While I was chasing him, like an idiot.
This dialogue and this scene are how what I consider the best racing movie out there starts. The story of the legendary rivalry between James Hunt and Niki Lauda, which not only features spectacular racing sequences, sublime sound, and a gripping story from the very beginning, but also a soundtrack by Hans Zimmer. This makes the context and every battle between these 2 driving geniuses even more epic and glorious. Chris Hemsworth and Daniel Bruhl portray James Hunt and Niki Lauda and do a fantastic job reflecting the personalities of both drivers who are so different, and the movie itself tells the story from the origin of their rivalry in the lower categories all the way to its conclusion at the 1976 Japanese Grand Prix. Without a doubt, it's the favorite movie of many people when it comes to motorsports, and I include myself in that list since it's impossible not to fall in love with the action scenes and the drama, and the charisma and performances of the actors who bring Lauda and Hunt to life. And the film itself lasts 122 minutes, but it's 122 minutes of pure cinema. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you watch it, because for me, this is the best movie ever made about the world of motorsports and Formula One. Number 1 spot, and the gold in our top 20 movies about the world of motorsports, Rush, the story of Niki Lauda versus James Hunt. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, we finish this huge list of movies that will inspire you if you don't want to miss the world of racing too much. But this is where I ask you, what did you think of this list? Did you think it was accurate? This one was based on my personal tastes, but I invite you to leave your own top list in the comments. Believe me, I'll be happy to read each and every one of them to learn about your personal preferences. Without further ado, I say goodbye, telling you that if you like this video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications so you know when I'm uploading a new video, and share this with your friends. I also invite you to follow us on our Instagram and Twitter accounts, the links to which will be in the description of this video. See you soon for more content here on your Skyline Racing channel. Thank you for tuning in, and see you later.